Hello to my grade 2 class. Let's start out with singing our good morning song, or our hello song, I guess it is. Remember that it has an echo to it. So I sing and then you sing back, and I hope you'll sing with me. Here we go. Hello there, how are you? It's so good to see you. We'll sing and be happy that we're all here together again. Today, I'd like to talk to you about some big words that we've been learning. I hope that you'll remember some of them. I'm going to say them for you and give you a chance to think about what they are, and then I'll tell you, so that we can refresh our memories. The first word that I have on the whiteboard here is orchestra. You think about whether you can remember what orchestra is. An orchestra is a big group of people, and each of the people are playing an instrument. There are people playing stringed instruments, and people playing wind instruments, and people playing brass instruments, and people playing percussion instruments. And there are a lot of them. Orchestras can be, anywhere from, a small orchestra might be, 25 people, and they can go right up to 80 people. Lots and lots of people in an orchestra. Our second word, see if you can read it. Maybe I'll divide it into sections for you. The first part here, my head's gone. Conductor. Conductor. Can you remember what a conductor is? The conductor is the person who stands in front of the orchestra, not just when they're playing so that we can hear them, but also when they are practicing. And the conductor stands in front. Sometimes the conductor has a stick that he holds, or she holds. Conductors can be ladies too. And they stand in front of the orchestra, and they let the orchestra know how quickly to go, and when to be quiet, and when to be loud, and what the mood of the whole thing is going to be. They show that, and they practice that with them, and they help to so that everybody is making the music sound as best as it can. And that's what the conductor does. I'm going to draw a little picture, a stick figure for a conductor. Here's our conductor standing. Usually they're standing on a box in front of everybody, and here's his head, her head, his head, and their arms, and there's the stick. There's the conductor. The next word also starts with ka. A little bit different. Composer. Can you think about what a composer is? The composer is the person who had the idea for the music. Quite often composers will write down their music. And when they have it written down, then that means that if you sing or if you play an instrument, then you can learn to play that music that the composer wrote the way that the composer wanted it to sound. And a composer might be alive. We talked about a composer. We have some composers that we've talked about who are alive. We sang a song by a composer who's alive last year. Or a composer might have lived a long, long time ago and, was born as a baby and was a little boy or a girl and grew up and wrote music and got old and their body died. But we still have their music and we can still play their music. So I'm going to draw, beside the composer, I'm going to draw a sheet of paper. Over here, here's my sheet of paper, and it's going to have notes on it. Composer uses lots of different kinds of notes, not just those. And probably their notes would be a little bit smaller than that so they can fit more of them on the page. So we have orchestra, that's the big group of musicians. Conductor is the person, the man or the woman who stands in front of them and helps them to know how to play the music. The composer is the person who had the idea for the music and wrote it down. And our next word is symphony. So symphony. And the next word is a word that didn't start out as an English word. It's a music word, but it's an Italian word. And that means it's spelled a little bit differently than we're used to. So that one is concerto. Can anybody think, this was brand new before we, the last time that we saw each other, a symphony is one kind of a piece of music that a conductor can write, and a concerto is sort of like a symphony, but it's different somehow. Can anybody think of how it's different? A symphony is a piece of music that does use an orchestra. So you don't always have to have an orchestra to have music, do you? But a symphony is a piece of music that a composer wrote for an orchestra that has lots of musicians, and they all play together. Some of the parts are fast, some of them are slow, some are quiet, some is loud. A symphony can be lots of different things. If a composer writes a concerto, then he also wrote it for an orchestra. The orchestra will still be there, they will still be playing, but in a concerto, there is a special part that is for one instrument, usually one instrument. And in the concerto, that one instrument gets a special part where they get to show how beautiful that instrument is and some fancy things that can be played on that instrument, some sounds, so that we notice that instrument more. So the concerto is going to still have the orchestra, but there's going to be a person playing a certain instrument that the composer picked, and the composer said, I'd really like to write something special for maybe a flute. And so the composer wrote music that the orchestra can play, and a special part that the flute will be able to show off what the flute can do and show how beautiful the flute is. I'd like to draw a picture for you on the whiteboard of what this looks like. If we had a chance, you and I, to go to a concert where an orchestra was playing, I would like to, let's think about what that would look like a little bit. We're going to pretend, for my picture, we're going to pretend that we are on the ceiling. Have you ever been to a place that was big and maybe open to, the doors were open a lot, that birds had gotten into? And you're inside and you're walking around and you can hear the birds up above you, twittering and singing and flying around. Well, we're going to pretend that we are like those birds. We're not going to fly around, but we are going to be up by the ceiling, way up high, and we're going to pretend that we're a bird. We're just sitting still and we're looking down. That's what my picture is going to show, is if we were on the ceiling and we were looking down at where everybody was. So in our concert that we go to, there would be a place for us to sit, and there would be a stage. So I'm going to draw a line here, right here. This part's going to be our stage. Sometimes a stage will have curtains. Sometimes they won't, but I'll draw curtains. Here are the curtains. Because remember, we're the bird. We're looking right down on it. So there's the stage, and this is the stage. And you and I, because we are going to watch the performance, we're going to be sitting in the audience. So here are where the people in the audience are sitting, all down here. And I'm not going to draw enough circles for everybody in the audience, but lots of people in the audience to watch the performance. That's where we would be sitting. And the orchestra would be on the stage. In front of the orchestra, there would be the conductor. And usually the conductor is pretty close to the audience, but the conductor's not looking at the audience, is he? Or she? Because the conductor is paying attention to what the orchestra is doing and helping the orchestra to do what they're doing. So the conductor is on the stage, but the conductor is facing away from where the audience is. So I'm going to draw the little box where the conductor stands. The orchestra is around the conductor. So an orchestra has lots of people, lots of instruments, so it fills a lot of space. So I'm going to draw the shape that the orchestra usually sits in. Orchestra usually sits in a shape like that. And all the people in the orchestra would be sitting on chairs too, just like the audience is, but different chairs. And they would be kind of, well, they would be sitting in a way so that they could all see the conductor. They'll all be facing in this way so that they can see how the conductor is directing them. And these dots that I showed right here would all probably be people from the string family. At the back of the orchestra back here would be the percussion section. Those would be things like drums and cymbals and triangles. And in the next row back here would be probably the people who are playing brass instruments like trumpets and French horns. And there would usually be a couple of rows here of people who are playing woodwind instruments, things like flutes and clarinets and oboes. So this is the shape of our orchestra. The audience is here. You and I would be sitting to watch the performance. We would be sitting here. The conductor is right here. The orchestra is sitting in sort of a rounded shape around the conductor so that they can all look towards the conductor. And the front section here would be strings. And then next would be the woodwind section. And then would be the brass section. And then would be the percussion section. With a symphony that a composer wrote, a piece that a composer wrote called a symphony, we would be all set. That would be all we would need. With a concerto, there's that one instrument that's going to be special. And the one instrument that's going to be special is usually going to be right close to the audience, right beside the conductor. So I'm going to put our little star right here where the soloist would be in a piece that is called a concerto that a composer wrote. So let's see. Our star is for the soloist who is playing the concerto. I'll put the star. Our square is where the conductor is standing. And the rest of this is the orchestra. This is the edge of the stage with the drapes, and this is the audience. And the reason I mention that to you is because today I would like to show you a couple of small sections of concertos, and we are going to figure out what instrument the composer wanted to show off. But before we do that, I'd like to show you pictures of real live orchestras. They're just pictures from the videos that I'm going to show you. So I'm going to pause so that the pictures will come up so that you can see them. There will be three or four different pictures, and the first one is going to be showing what the orchestra looks like if you were sitting in the orchestra, maybe back here, and if you were sitting there looking at the conductor. So the first picture is going to show if you were sitting in the orchestra looking at the conductor. Then there's going to be another picture, and it's going to show if you were sitting in the audience, maybe way back at the back of the audience, looking at the orchestra. And you'll be able to see that the orchestra is in this shape and that there are lots of people playing the instruments. And then the third one is also going to be a picture that shows what it looks like from the audience, but it'll be as if you were in the audience, maybe in the front row, and the stage was a high stage. Before we watch the concertos, I would like to sing another song with you. We have been working on this song, which is actually a song and a hand game. So first we're going to sing the song, and then we'll go over the words for the hand game. And this song is in Japanese, and it is a song that is talking about climbing a mountain. We'll sing the song, and after we sing the song, I'll show you the pictures of this particular mountain that this hand game is about. There are lots of hand games like this, and in Japanese, they almost always start with the words se, 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 no, yoi, yoi, yoi. Do you remember that? All right, so let's sing it. All right, starts with se, 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 no, yoi, yoi, yoi. Se, 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 no, yoi, yoi, yoi. Arupusu, ichiman jaku, koyari no uede, arupen, odori usa, odori masho. Do you remember it? We'll sing it one more time and then we'll do the hand motions. Se, 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 no, yo, yo, yo. Arupusu, ichiman jaku, koyari no uede, arupen, odori usa, odori masho. Ran, 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 ran. I hope you were singing with me. And now we'll go over the hand game. Now, when we're in class, there's somebody there with you that you can usually practice the hand game with. Maybe at home, there's somebody that you can teach the hand game. Or you can just practice like I'm going to do it by myself. First, it starts with, let's do the hardest one first. The hardest one is the one where we kind of make a box with our partner. And we need our right hand. So when you're looking at me in the video, if you match my hand, then you'll probably have your left hand. So I'm gonna turn my back, and if we both hold up this hand, then you have your right hand. Okay, this is your right hand. And this one's your left hand. Whoops, where is it? There it is. That's your left hand. So we want our right hand. Have you got your right hand? We want our right hand to go like this. And remember, it had to cover our sign for our school that was on our shirts because it's over our hearts. So our right hand is going over our hearts, and our left hand is reaching out and touching our buddy's elbow. So if you were right in front of me, your left hand would be touching my elbow right here. So your left hand would be reaching out and touching my elbow. And my left hand would be reaching out and touching your elbow. That's the one that we always had to work at to see if we could get it right. So it's like you're making a box with the person in front of you. And there's going to be a big empty space right here. You don't have to go across like this. You just go right straight in front of you so that you can touch their elbow. All right. Here we go. We have our friend's hands. Hands. Se, 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 no, yo, yo, yo. Arupusu, ichiman jaku, koyari no uede. Arupen odorio, sa odo rimasho. Ra, ra, ran, 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 ra, ra, ran, 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 ra, ra, ran, 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 ran. This is how we end, is in the box. Do you want to do it one more time? I'll go through the motions and then we'll sing it again. So, se, 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 no, yo, yo, yo. Clap, right. Clap, left. Koyo, ri, no, u. Push, ede. Aru, pe, en. Elbow, odo, rio. Hips. Sa, o, do. And then our box. Rima, sho. This is your friend's elbow. And then ra, ra, ran, 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 ra, ra, ran, ran, ran. Palm push. Ran, ra, ra, ran, 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 ran. Hips. Ran, 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 ran. And then elbow. Ra, ran. We'll sing it one more time. Friends' hands. Se, 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 no, yo, yo, yo. Arupusu, ichiman jaku, koyari no uede. Arupen odorio, sa odo rimasho. Ra, ra, ran, 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 ra, ra, ran, ran, ra, ran, ra, ra, ran, 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 ran. I think I'm starting to get it. I hope you were able to do that with me. Before we look at the concertos that I want to show you, I would like to show you some instruments that we've learned. I'm going to get my fancy eraser and erase our words. Orchestra, conductor, composer, symphony, concerto. And here's our stage, and here's the audience. Let's talk a little bit about the instruments that we've learned. Some of them we learned this year. We'll start with those. And some of them we talked about last year, and I'll remind you. This year we talked about percussion instruments. And percussion instruments is any instrument that can be hit or shaken or scraped. So I'm going to write the word percussion. No, I'm not going to write the word percussion. So I'm going to put these pictures of some percussion instruments on the board. The first picture I'm going to put on the board is a triangle. Is that one hit, shaken, or scraped? It's hit. That's a percussion instrument. That one is shaken. The maracas are shaken. Put this one. That's a guiro, and it is scraped. So we have some percussion instruments, and there actually are concertos that composers have written for percussion instruments. Next, I'd like to show you an instrument that you actually each have had a chance to try. Do you remember what it's called? It's called a violin. And the violin is in the string section. The violin can be plucked, or it can be played with a bow. The other instruments in the string section are also played the same way, with a bow or with plucking. Some of them are very big. And we did talk about these last year. We didn't talk about them much this year. So the instrument I just showed you and played a tiny bit was the violin. Here's a picture of a violin. And we actually talked about some other instruments from the string section last year because we had the opportunity to see a string quartet. So I'm going to show you those pictures too, just to remember a little bit. There is an instrument in a string quartet that looks like a violin, but it's a little bit bigger. It's called a viola. Here's a picture of a viola. It's very hard to tell the difference between a violin and viola just by looking at it. But the viola is a little bit bigger, and so the notes are a little bit lower. Also in the string section, as part of the string quartet that we saw last year, we learned about a string instrument called a cello. A cello is even bigger. And as you can see, there is a pin coming out of the bottom of the cello. The pin is made of metal, and it helps the cello to stand on the floor. The cello is usually played by a person who is sitting down, and the cello is between their legs, and they're holding the cello right here, and their bow is moving down here. So that's the cello. And there's another string instrument that we talked about last year. This instrument wasn't in the quartet, but this is the big, big string instrument that would be in an orchestra. It's called a double bass. And it's so big that you're usually standing up when you're playing the double bass, because the double bass is taller than I am, even if I stand up. So we have percussion instruments, string instruments, and the other instruments that we have learned about were ones that we talked about last year. We talked about an instrument. I'm going to see if you can remember the name. This one. This instrument makes sound by having air. It's called a flute, and it's in the woodwind section of the orchestra. Now, when we play a flute, it needs air, and one of the things that I showed you last year was how the air makes the sound in a flute. So I brought in a pop bottle, and I have it here again today. And if you can see the hole in the top of the pop bottle, if I blow right into that hole, there's some sound, but it doesn't really make a note, does it? If I blow across the top, so I put kind of my chin up against the pop bottle and I blow the air across, I'm going to drop my flute, across the top so that the air is going this way, and some of the air goes in, but not very much, and some of the air goes across, and that makes a note. And that is how the air and the sound happen on a flute. Now, I will play you a couple of notes on the flute. And it goes even higher than that. This is a flute. I will put a picture of the flute on the board for us. And the last instrument that I wanted to review with you that we talked about last year, that you learned about, is this one. It's the trumpet. The trumpet is in the brass section. And the way we can tell the brass section apart from the woodwind section is the air happens differently. With the trumpet, there is a mouthpiece that looks a little bit like this. I don't have a trumpet. I have a mouthpiece from a brass instrument. The mouthpieces look a little bit different for each instrument. But when you're playing a brass instrument, the sound happens because your lips are buzzing. You can try that if you want. You have to make your lips buzz together. And here is. So in a brass instrument, this is what the mouthpiece looks like. I'll hold it. They're all a little bit different, but this is the shape of it. And this part right here goes into the instrument and connects with the rest of the instrument. So on our picture, this part is right there. It's very small. So there's our trumpet. And I think I will borrow this one and put it right there. I ran out of magnets. So now that we've just reviewed the instruments that you know, now I would like to show you some concertos. And as we reviewed at the beginning of the lesson, a concerto is a piece that's written by a composer specially for a certain instrument. So the rest of the orchestra is playing, but there's a special part for that instrument that they get to show how beautiful that instrument can be and how complicated, sometimes they do very complicated things because it's fun to see them do it. And that is what a concerto is all about, is because the composer wrote it especially for those instruments. I'm going to change the way that you see the picture here. You'll see my face in a little box, and I will be able to show you the video that I want to show you. All right, here we are. I'm sharing a video with you of a concerto, a little bit of a concerto. We're going to be looking at 4 little bits of 4 different concertos by different composers. And each concerto that we're going to look at has, the concerto is focused on a different instrument. So in each one of these, the composer had chosen a different instrument that he wanted to highlight in his concerto. So the first one that we're going to watch, the soloist is a girl. This girl who is playing the solo is 14 years old. So we have people at our school that are 14 years old. And I want you to see if you can figure out what instrument this girl is playing. If you look at the picture, she is the one in the blue dress. And you can see the front of the stage, just like we talked about. And in the middle of the stage, sort of in the middle of the stage, is where the soloist is standing. She is in the blue dress. And right beside her on the floor, you'll see a box, which is, looks to me like it's kind of a reddish brown color. And standing on the box is the conductor. In this recording, the conductor, I want you to notice something about him. When he conducts the orchestra, every conductor does it differently. Every conductor has their own way of expressing how they want the orchestra to sound. And this conductor, his movements are just so small. He doesn't move his arms a whole lot. He doesn't jump up and down. His hair doesn't fly all over the place. But he's still showing them how he wants them to play. So I'd like you to notice the conductor and how his movements are
are showing the orchestra how he wants them to play, but he's not moving a lot. And I would also like you to pay attention to the person who is playing the special part in this concerto and see if you can figure out what instrument it is. The next video that I would like to show you, the composer is a composer that we've talked about this year. His name is Johannes Brahms. And the picture that I'm showing you on the screen right now is a picture of Johannes Brahms after he had, grown up and gotten old enough that his beard was turning gray. I'm going to slide the screen up a little bit and show you a picture of what he looked like when he was a little bit younger. He was composing when he was this old as well. This is also Johannes Brahms. And let's just review a little bit of what we know about Brahms. We learned quite a few things about Brahms. We learned that Brahms was a composer who was born in Germany. This is what I'm showing you right now is the worksheet one of the worksheets that we did in class, and I'm just double checking. I hope this is still recording. The another thing that we learned about Brahms was that his family was poor. When he was a young boy, he played the piano in dance halls and in drinking halls at nighttime in order to help his family pay for food and for a place to live. And here is our picture of Brahms. Again, we learned that one of the things about Brahms that just wasn't important to him was how he looked. He did not pay much attention to how he looked. He didn't wear socks. Sometimes he forgot to wear suspenders, so that when he was conducting, he had to use one hand to hold up his pants. I hope that didn't happen to him very much. Brahms also liked to go for long walks in the countryside, and he liked children. When Brahms was alive, there wasn't a lot of candy available. There were not very many people that had candy. but he liked to give candy to the children who were around him. So he must have liked children quite a lot. Brahms also, it was really important to him that his music sounded just right. Sometimes if he wrote some music and he wasn't quite satisfied with it, he would actually destroy what he had written because he wasn't satisfied with it. So Brahms, on the sheet, it says Brahms wanted his music to sound just right. Many times he destroyed his composition if he was not happy with it. All right. Let's see. Yes, this is still recording. That's good. All right, I'd like to show you the next video is going to be actually Brahms' Concerto. And there is an orchestra playing, but as you'll be able to see, there is a special part for one instrument. And let's look at the picture for a second. In the middle of the picture, you can see my arrow wiggling around here. This is the conductor. This man standing right here is the conductor. He is standing facing, oh, I don't want it to start yet. He is standing facing the orchestra. So each person in the orchestra can see him. So all of these people are facing in a way that they can see him. Now, here is my arrow over here. If you look in this area, this is where the audience is sitting. They are ready to watch the performance, and they are facing the orchestra. But as you can imagine, they can only see the back of the conductor because he is always going to be facing the orchestra, and the audience is going to be able to hear the orchestra that way. And our soloist for this concerto, the special instrument, is right here. And I think you already know what the instrument is. We will name the instrument after. Music by Brahms, a concerto. The special instrument in that concerto was the piano. You can see this is also part of the piano. The top part of the piano can be open or closed, and this stick right here is what is holding it open. And this shape of a piano, pianos can come in different shapes. but this one is a nice fancy one, and it is called a grand piano. And Brahms wrote this music especially for the orchestra and piano, and so it's called a concerto. Let's watch another one. We're ready to watch our last video for today. This is another concerto. A concerto is a piece that a composer wrote for an orchestra and an instrument that has a special part. You can see in the picture that is showing right now the orchestra, and the conductor is right here where my little arrow is wiggling around. This is the conductor. He actually isn't standing on a box, but he is in front of the orchestra. The whole orchestra can see him, and if we could see off of the screen on this side, that's where the audience would be sitting. Right where my arrow is over there further, that would be where the audience is. And this person right here is the person who is playing the special part for the special instrument. Let's listen for a bit. Oh, and the composer for this one is Franz Joseph Haydn. We learned about Haydn last year. We haven't talked about him this year very much, but Haydn is a composer who, let's see, what might be some of the things you might remember about him. He likes to play jokes. He actually went to school with a lot of other little boys his age, and one day in class, he thought it would be entertaining to get out his scissors, and he gave a haircut to the little boy in front of him. The little boy had a ponytail. All the little boys had ponytails, and he cut off his ponytail, and Haydn got in trouble, and he got kicked out of school. But that was one of the jokes that he played. He also played jokes in the music that he wrote. This particular concerto doesn't have a joke in it, but he has some music that he wrote that had jokes in it we'll talk about sometime. Here we go. All right, and that is the end of what I'm going to show you in the video of that concerto for today. The instrument, did you figure out what the instrument was? That is a trumpet that the young lady was playing. She's a very good trumpet player. And the piece is called a concerto because it had a special part for an instrument as well as having the orchestra playing. For the end of class today, let's sing a song together.
Before we say goodbye today, let's sing again together. A Ram Sam Sam. This song, I think we maybe sang it in 1 or 2 classes since the last time that we saw each other. The words go like this. A ram sam sam, a ram sam sam, and here are the motions. A ram sam sam, a ram sam sam. Gooly 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 ram sam sam. A rafiq, gooly 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 ram sam sam. A rafiq, gooly 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 ram sam sam. All right, let's sing it. Ram sam sam, ram sam sam, gooly 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 ram sam sam, ram sam sam, ram sam sam, gooly 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 ram sam sam. Rafiq, gooly 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 ram sam sam, rafiq, gooly 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 ram sam sam, ram sam sam, ram sam sam, gooly 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 ram sam sam, ram sam sam, ram sam sam, gooly 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 ram sam sam, rafiq, gooly 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 ram sam sam, rafiq, gooly 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 ram sam sam. I hope you were singing with me. Thank you. I'll see you the next time.